Welcome to the Winner's Playbook with Steve and Josh. Disclaimer: the information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal circumstances. Please head to the show notes if you wish to book a free 15-minute call to discuss your personal situation.
Okay, welcome back to the Winner's Playbook. My name is Steve Sloan. I'm here with my co-director, Josh Lee. Josh, how are we going?
Steve, always good. Favorite time of the week, chatting with you for a bit of time here. So I'm very happy right now. It's been good. Lots happening, business, personal life. Got the baby shower actually tomorrow, which I don't know how I feel about that because it's normally just the girls doing the baby shower, but somehow I've been sucked in and we're doing a mixed type of situation. So there's some games.
Change.
Yeah, there's some games planned. I haven't had nothing to do with the planning of those games. But yeah, looking forward to it, and we're officially about 2 months out from the baby being here, so it's coming in hot. Fair to say. So I might need some tips somewhere along here, Steve.
Yeah, man, I don't know how good my tips are when it comes to parenting, but yeah, I'm happy to share what I've got with you. No problem.
Anything new in your life at the moment?
Well, the business acquired another business this week, so that's been lots happening from the business perspective. So we took over another business in Melbourne. That was nice, and a couple of new stuff joining us next week. Taking a lot of my time, but that's all the fun of running Link Wealth Group. And if we get into it, mate, this week's topic is how to be a better leader. Given our positions in the company, we're probably pretty attuned to this one. If we kick it off, what is it about leadership, and how do you actually become a better leader? Or if you're not one, how do you become one?
Yeah, it's it's a pretty heavy one. And is leadership natural? Is it built in? Like, are you naturally born a leader? There's a lot of different ways to unpack it, but I suppose you can look at being a leader in a lot of different facets because it doesn't necessarily mean that you're, say, running businesses like us. That could be, from a sporting point of view in terms of being a leader there. Amongst your friends, maybe even just amongst your family. But I suppose the way I think of being a leader or leadership is people are looking to you for guidance, and you're kind of setting you know, the way forward. So you're the one that's kind of setting the tone. People look to you when times are tough. They look to you for guidance, and they look to you for probably surety, I think, as well. So it's not easy being a leader though. It's probably one of the toughest things that you could probably do in your life, because with that I think comes a lot of responsibility, a lot of burden on your back as well. And for sure, not everyone is absolutely cut out to be a leader. I think sometimes people like the idea of being a leader. Like, I think it sounds good, I'm the captain of my sports team, or I'm a coach, or I've got my own business with all these staff, or whatever it may be. That might sound good in principle, but when you're in the hot seat and you're making the calls, and then it all falls on you, that's a different situation. And that's a big part of, I think, being a leader is personal responsibility, and really embracing personal responsibility. Because even though, like, if we just talk about Link, the staff that are in Link, and ultimately when mistakes are made, although the staff may have caused it, but ultimately it falls on our shoulders, and in the end it's on us. So, being a leader, you have a lot of weight on your back, a lot of responsibility. But on the flip side, it's also incredibly rewarding as well, and satisfying, when done in the right ways. But what about you, Steve? Do you think, you've obviously had Link running for quite some time now, but did you naturally gravitate towards leadership, like through schooling or sports or anything? Were you kind of that person, or not really?
Yeah, I suppose leadership can take many forms, right? Like, as you
Yeah.
said, I think to generalize, to be a leader is just to show the way, and that doesn't mean you need to lead a team. I think specifically though, if we're talking about leading a team, and that's probably what we're talking about the most because that's what we do. Yeah, I'll call it out a bit here. I think you are generally a bit born with it, I reckon, in that regard. You can like. When you lead a team and a team, I'd say being born with it massively helps, probably, with that skill set. You absolutely could learn it over time. There's no doubt about that. But I think it definitely helps if you're born with a certain skill set that makes you become a leader. I sort of always, I suppose, from the get go, always did my thing. That's not to say I wasn't listening to people. I always was. No, I never held back in pushing the way I felt it needed to be pushed, or going the way I felt it needed to be go. Whether that was in school, going against the grain of things, or just doing the way I thought it was best to do something. I always sort of did that. I always felt the drive to do that, and I think that's always helped me. But yeah, I think it was part of my personality, to be
Mm.
honest, and I think it naturally has always been that way.
Did you get in trouble a lot as a kid, or?
I did actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, funnily
Well,
enough,
that's what
as
I
a
was
kid,
thinking for
I did.
when you said that.
Yeah,
I thought you generally. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing because I was much the
yeah,
same and I was a pest as a
yeah,
student, and would always question things to teachers. And yeah,
mm.
I don't know. Is that a sign of a leader? Maybe there's some parts to
Yeah,
it
it
which
might be. It
you
might
know.
be. Like even at school, I led a bloody march down. It was a protest in Martin Place against
Here we go.
the
Now
the
I don't know
French
about
were
this one, Steve.
the French were bombing Muro Atoll, I think it was called. It was an island
Right,
in
right.
and I decided to lead the whole a lot of the school kids off to the city, just walk out of school one day and take them to the
Jeez.
city and protest. And look, I got suspended for that. But it was probably the first signs. I think I was in year 8 or something.
Yep.
Probably the first signs of trouble. And it sort of always was a bit like that. And I also always went against the grain, to be honest.
Mm.
I never really worried about what people thought.
Yep.
Not in a bad way. Like, if people didn't
Yeah.
like what I did or said, well, bad luck. It didn't bother me. I never got upset by things like that. I sort of, but in saying that, I'd like to think I always cared
Mm.
and I always looked after people and always had other people's interests at heart, and obviously still to today.
Mm.
So it's a bit of a combination. This one, it's a tricky one.
Yeah.
But if we dig into it, mate, and if people want to build that skill set, so say you're out there and you want to build a business and you dream of that, like
Mm.
what are some of the things you think you need or can do to become a better leader?
Yeah, well, I first of all think you need to just look inwards and actually look at yourself
Mm,
first, because before you can help anyone else, you have to help yourself. So you got to be
yeah,
selfish in a way, I think, initially, and whether that is scaling a business or whatever it may be. But because ultimately, if you're a bit, you're a bit shaky, you're unsure of yourself, or you've got a lot of problems, if you're trying to become a leader, that's going to rub off on a lot of people as well. So I think before you become a leader, you have to just really look inwards and really understand your blind spots. And it's not to say that if you've got blind spots, you can't be a leader. I think everyone's got blind spots and strengths and weaknesses. We both do, but I think the starting point is definitely to look inwards, understand more about yourself, and then of course if you're trying to then be a leader or you're in a business, like does that mean you have to be the head? Like, do you have to be like the head of the business? Could you be like a good book we've read a couple of months ago in our book club? What was it? Your Next Five Moves by Patrick Bet David, and
mm,
his concept that he talks about in there is being an entrepreneur. So not necessarily being like starting up your own business and being the CEO or anything like that, but being in a business and being an entrepreneur. So like maybe you're going up to become the one of the heads of the business. It could be the COO, chief operating officer. So not necessarily the head honcho, so to speak, but being an entrepreneur. So you don't necessarily start your own business, but then you grow up through the business and then you become one of the leaders of the business from that respect. So I think it can come in a lot of different forms and shapes and sizes, most importantly. But I think you just got to obviously figure out what that actually looks like for you, because it doesn't necessarily always mean you have to be number one.
yeah,
There's plenty of great leaders that haven't necessarily been number one in a business before. So
yeah, yeah. And if you do have it, if you get to that position and you are a leader, how do you go about doing this? How do you motivate the team? Like, how do you
yeah,
inspire and motivate?
I think what's always worked for me is kind of acting, leading the way, like acting in the way that you want other people to act. So if you're telling people to do something, well, it's because I'm doing it. You know what I mean? Like I'm there, I'm in the trenches, and if I'm doing it, I'm actually trying to go probably harder than everyone in my team. Like I always look at, say us being in business and having staff, and yes, they work for us, but I actually think we work for them.
Yeah,
We got to lead from the front. We got to provide all of the opportunity, and that's really all on us. So that's the way I kind of tend to think about it. But I'll tell you one thing that's really helped me like early on, was just getting into martial arts. Like that actually really helped me when I was quite
Mm,
young develop, discipline. And then through that, I actually started teaching, at a pretty young age when I was 12, 13 years old. Oh, no, sorry, a little bit older than that, probably 14, 15. I started actually teaching. I was an instructor. And
mm,
that I think gave me my first little taste of being a leader because I was in charge of classes and
yeah,
telling people what to do. And that definitely straightened me out, with discipline and from being a pretty bad kid, and that got me on the straight and narrow. But then, yeah, having that responsibility and people then looking to me of all shapes and sizes and ages, and looking to me for guidance was probably just my first little bit of taste. But yeah, for me, being a leader, it's not about really being perfect all the time as well, because you're always going to make, from time to time you make the wrong call, and but
oh,
with
absolutely,
that.
yeah,
You
yeah,
just take it on the chin though, and you
yeah,
you own it, and you embrace it, and then you don't do it again. Of
yeah,
course, you learn from your mistakes, but I think the another part there, and I don't want to ramble on too long, but the not letting those bad times keep you down as well. Like
yeah,
like sort of like water off a duck's back. When things go wrong, or if I have a bad day, I feel like I can recover pretty quick. Like the
mm,
next day just rolls around and I'm back again. Whereas I find, with people that probably don't naturally have those leadership tendencies or probably won't make it as leaders, is they sort of hang on to that baggage, and then it kind of it's like a cancer in a way. It grows, and then if you're like that and you're bringing your baggage to the business or your problems in your life, because we've all got problems, the your staff or team around you, they're feeding off that. So I think that's one thing I personally feel like I do quite well, is I don't feel like I bring in any sort of baggage, and
mm.
I'm always pretty happy and positive, optimistic type of person, as well, but also don't keep my head in the sand. I know there's a lot of bad things going on out there in the world, but what about you, Steve? What's kind of worked for you? Or what tips would you have, for people wanting to be a leader?
I think leadership, from my perspective, you definitely get better at it as you go.
Yeah,
Like it's not something that you just go, right, I'm a gun leader and that's it. It just happens. Like I
yeah,
look at the last 25 years that I've been sort of in management roles and leadership roles. I look back at some of the leadership roles I did and cringe. Like it wasn't that good in some of that those
yeah,
decision making. I actually owned and ran a bar and nightclub in Sydney in a formal life, and some of my decision making as a leader back then was pretty terrible.
mhm,
But so it's something you definitely can get better at and work at. And I think, and if you want to be better, you need to constantly learn. And we do that all the time at Link as leaders. We take advice from, we've got a business consultant, Buzz Gardner, and we listen to him a lot. And I think you've got to be open to willing to learn as a leader. If you're not and closed up, that's when you really fall apart.
yeah,
So we'll be willing to learn is your probably key part of that, and learn in terms of everything. Like
mm,
everything to do with how humans interact or technical or whatever it may be. Keep on learning,
yeah,
because I've definitely got better at it as we go. But it's not. I would say leadership in terms of the sense of managing people. It's really not easy.
yeah,
It's got to be the hardest job I think I've got in terms of managing people. Because you've got to take everyone's views into consideration. You've
mm,
got to have a balanced approach to everything. You've got to act fair at all times. You are judged on everything you do. You can't step out of place at any time. And that's not for everyone, as you said at the start, right? It's not that fun sometimes. You can't have bad days.
mm,
If the leaders like you and me of the ship are having a bad day, well, that's just going to rub off on absolutely everyone and cause this toxic culture. So you just can't have bad days.
yeah.
It's as simple as that. So it's hard. It's really hard sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about motivating and then inspiring your team? Like, what are some things that have worked for you in the past in terms of how you manage or lead? Is there any key, things that you
Yeah.
do?
I think look, just be absolutely fair at all times, and I think
Mm,
in every dealing you have, I think that motivates people on its own because they see how you interact with people, and
yeah.
that helps them interact with people in the right way. As you said at the start, your work level has to be the best. There has to be the best output. So I like to think that my output's pretty high. It has to be. You can't have the leaders not outputting the most, right? Clearly, that has to happen. I think by doing that, it naturally resonates through the group. Like I think the true leaders, look for those opportunities, think outside the box. The true leaders are constantly challenging the status quo, constantly challenging how to do it better, constantly challenging where to take it. I think we do that pretty well in our companies. We're always looking for that next step. Leadership has to do that. You've got to create those opportunities and create that pathway for people and create that pathway for the companies you're running. So if you do that, people sit back and go, "Shit, that's out there."
Yeah.
But then when it comes off, it's pretty cool. It's really cool, And when you take those punts with life, and I've taken a lot of them, especially in some of these companies we run, and they've come off. People look at that and go, "Shit, like that's really cool." So that's leadership on its own. So really give it a red hot crack and have a swing, and don't be afraid to have a swing. And if it doesn't come off, that's okay. Just don't make it critical, but just have a swing.
Yeah, so leadership, I think, it's really just about people. That's
Yeah.
all leadership is: managing, leading yourself, or managing yourself, and leading and managing people. Like, I think it's as really simple as that. But before we close out, what should people stop doing if they actually want to become a better leader? Like, what are things that you should say? Like, if you're doing that, it's probably a red flag. It's not really the sign of a true leader or a strong leader. Is any sort of traits
Never
or like,
pass the buck. Yeah,
yeah,
never blame, never
yep,
pass the buck.
yep.
End of the day, you've got to take personal responsibility
That's
for
exactly what I was thinking.
absolutely everything you do.
Yep.
You just can't pass the buck. Leaders step up, take the hits, get back up, and go again.
Yep.
Don't blame anyone. It's up to you.
Mm.
Whether you're in the head position, the second position, the third position, you can step up and just deal with it, and that's what you got to do. You can't pass the buck. So,
Yeah.
true leaders, you simply can never do that.
Yeah, and that was exactly what was on my mind, personal responsibility. And then to that, I would add is, what you're thinking about as well. Like, don't think about a lot of the macro factors. Like, if I talk to, governments, interest rates, like things that you have no control over, there's no point spending your time. Like, yes, you want to know what's going on in the world, but there's nothing more that I hate than engaging in conversations around things that don't like mean anything. Like us having a conversation around Trump versus, Camilla in the US and how that plays out. Who knows? Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of things, and I think there's a lot of just noise out there in the world. And sometimes I just see people get caught up in it. And that's why I say don't focus on anything in the macro. Yes, understand what's going on, how that could have implications in your business or in your life, but just focus on the controllables. Like, what can you actually control in your life? Your emotions, what you're doing, how you're looking after yourself, your health, your fitness, your friends, your family, your business, etc. And not just get caught up in a lot of that noise, because I see a lot of people that do, and they become quite cynical as well. Because if you look at the news and all of what's going on in the world, like, it's all bad shit. Like, but there's a lot of good out there, but it's just not shown, and that's just the society. So I think you just got to focus on what you actually can control, and just block out all of that noise, and become laser focused as well. Try not to be a jack of all trades, be a master of one. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, that's why we, with the businesses that we've got going, like, they all complement each other. We don't have any random tech startups or anything funky of that nature. So you just kind of focus on what you're good at, and probably where your passion lies as well. I think, it's pretty hard to get up and work long hours and really grind and sacrifice time with friends and family if you don't actually love what you do, or you have a passion for what you do. So I think that probably also aligns with being a leader in whatever you want to do. Well, you probably damn want to love and enjoy what you do day in and day out, because if not, it's going to be a pretty miserable journey along the way. So,
Totally
yeah, I'm
agree.
not sure if you'd add anything to that, Steve, before we close out.
No, that's you nailed it, mate. And enjoy, like I think you just said it. Enjoy, like if you combine all that, enjoy what you do, and own it, then you're destined. You could be a true leader.
Yeah, no, I think if you can find other people that get on that journey with you as well, like get other leaders around you, there's probably nothing more, rewarding or satisfying. Because, maybe before I came into the business, Steve, you were a bit lonely. You could have been a bit lonely there
Was, mate. Yeah, it was
on
lonely
your
at the
own,
top.
but yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, if you get other people on the journey and you're all going in that same direction, I don't think there's anything more satisfying and maybe powerful as well. So, guys, we're going to finish up there today. I appreciate everyone that is listening in. 5 stars, Spotify and Apple, if you are getting value out of this, because it does help us out a lot. You can follow us on all the social media channels. We're out there basically wherever you look. Steve's newsletter does go out weekly as well, so you can subscribe to that in the show notes. And of course, if you do want to chat with any of the financial advisors in our business, or the accountants in our business, or the mortgage brokers, you can jump on the website and take a look. But until next week, Steve, I'll see you then, mate.
See you then, mate. Bye.
Cheers.